What is going on, my friend? It is Danny here from projectmanaverse.com, real world technical project management for beginners. And today I'm going to talk about some common mistakes when mobilizing your project. I'll talk about what mobilizing a project means. I'll tell you why it's important that you understand these mistakes as a project manager and what they are. And then I'll go into the actual mistakes themselves. So first of all, what is mobilizing a project mobilization? Well, the project mobilization is right at the start of the project, usually after you've got your funding approved and you can start to bring in your resources, you can pick your team, you might start thinking about the high level scope, some of the critical success factors of the project. You might have your project kickoff workshop, those kind of activities. This is early stages of the project. That's when you mobilize your project. So that's what project mobilization is. And you should care about these mistakes as a project manager, as a technical project manager, because number one, a lot of things done in the project mobilization phase are big decisions, and they can't, once they've been put in place, they're quite hard to change. You can't reverse them. It's pretty much too late once the project has got going, especially when you're really into the thick of it and you're very busy on your project. So when you put these things in, it's hard to change them, and they can shape the course of the project or the direction of the project in the right direction or the wrong direction. So it's really important that you get them right at the start, because as I say, once they're in, and if you get them wrong, it can really start to push your project down a pathway that's going to make your life much more difficult. It may not mean you're definitely going to fail, but it's going to add stress and risk to your project. So it's best you understand what these common mistakes are. I see them a lot, and you can avoid them from the start of the project by taking a bit of time and thinking about these things quite carefully. Okay, so I've told you what project mobilization is what it is, and I've told you why it's important. So let's now go into the actual common mistakes. So common mistake number one is that the wrong methodology, the wrong change methodology is picked for the project, especially in this modern world when we're seeing more agile projects and some of the more structured project management traditional methodology is being put aside, not being used as much, but it's still there as an option. You should really think carefully about, do you need a big project or a formal project, or do you want to go down the agile route and do it in sprints and just work in sprints and do updates and iterations as you go through with less governance and less control? So it's critical that you get that right. And I see this quite a lot, that maybe I'm slightly biased, that people just are so obsessed with the new fashionable way of doing things that they don't pick the right methodology, and they don't do it with a proper project, or at least a hybrid where you can still use some of those agile tools but still keep it within the structure of a project. So you've still got your timelines and your project plan and all that, but within that you can still use your Jira board and work in 2-week sprints if you want to. So that's common mistake number one, because if you don't pick the right methodology, again, you can really screw things up, especially if it's a difficult project and it requires a lot of coordination across lots of different teams. If you don't get the right level of project in there, then you could fail. So that's common mistake number one. Common mistake number two is not agreeing the right level of governance from the start of the project, and that's kind of ties into the first point. But it's really important that you agree with your stakeholders, especially your senior stakeholders, what the governance of the project is going to be, and make sure you have adequate governance, because governance is there to protect the project. It's there to protect you as a project manager as well. And if you don't have enough rigor and structure and policy behind the project, then you can really leave yourself exposed to things going wrong and then you being ultimately blamed for it. But if you have the right governance in place, then you can say, well, we followed the governance, we all agreed to it, and this is where we are. So no one can really point fingers. It's just the way things have turned out. So things like just making sure you agree who's going to sign off certain documents, what documents you're going to produce, who are the actual stakeholders who will sign them off, what's that sign off process, things like setting up checkpoints throughout the project to see how the finances are doing, to make the decision as to whether you should go on or think about stopping it or think about changing the course of direction. Things like what else, like steering groups, so making sure you've got a steering group where you've got some senior leaders in a meeting where big issues and risks can be taken for discussion and big decisions can be taken to be made by them with all the facts laid out in front of them, and then whatever they decided can be documented in some kind of SharePoint or whatever you want to use. So when it comes to down the line, you can look back in your project and say, well, we did these things because these decisions were made at this point and this point and this point by these people. So we did the right thing. We followed the control. If you don't have that in place, then you can get yourself into a lot of trouble at the end of the project if it's turned into a car crash and someone is always being looked for to put the blame on, and that might be you. But if you've got good project governance in place and you have from the start, then you can be confident that you've done the right thing and it covers your own back in a sense. So that's common mistake number 2. Common mistake number 3 is underestimating the complexity of a project. Now, these IT projects, they're usually quite tricky. There's a lot more to them than people think, especially in big organizations. It takes a lot of coordination, a lot of fiddly bits involved. It's a lot more complicated than you think, even to do a simple thing, or what appears to be a simple thing on the surface. So it's easy to underestimate the complexity, and if you do that, then you might under-resource the project, you might not allocate enough funding to it, you might not plan enough time to do it, and you get yourself into a jam. So you just got to make sure you do your due diligence on the complexity. Don't take one person's word for it, especially if it's someone senior or a product owner who says, oh, this is my product, so I think it's going to be fine, we'll do it this way. It's not going to be very difficult to do that. I've seen that before. It turned into one particular project I was parachuted into because they didn't even put a project manager on it because they thought it'd be quite easy. They can just do it agile with no project manager. It was an absolute car crash and I was parachuted in to put it right. So don't take anyone's word for it. Make sure you do your due diligence, get lots of people's opinions and present the facts to whoever that decision-making forum is. And again, if it turns out that the project was more complex than you thought, at least you can go back and say, well, we did a lot of homework, we thought about it very carefully, we had a workshop and we considered all these factors, and we looked at previous projects, we got all this experience in different project managers who'd done similar projects and engineers who'd worked on similar things. And if you do all that, do your due diligence to think about how complex is this project, you shouldn't really be underestimating it. So that's my tip for that one. Now, the last common mistake I see is not assigning roles and responsibilities at the start of the project, or if they are assigned, it's more of a tick box exercise. And I'm not really talking about the people within your team, although that is quite important. It's important, but it's usually fairly obvious. The engineer is there to do the development, and the BA is there to do the analysis, and your architect is there to think about the overall solution. So, and your test manager is there to manage the testing. So those things are pretty straightforward. It's more about the leadership of the team and that kind of structure. Again, especially in the modern world, when they're introducing these more agile ways of working and these new roles like product owners and scrum masters and all that, you need to be clear who is actually in charge of the project. Is it the project manager, or is it the delivery lead, they call them, or is it the sponsor, or is it the product owner, is it the scrum master? Get it clear, because as a project manager, you want to have control of the project. That's what you should be pushing for. You don't want to have to be answering to someone who is like a business lead or a product owner who may have good SME knowledge. They're a subject matter expert in the application or the area of the business or the process that the application is used for, but they may not be the best person in terms of experience of delivering projects or delivering change. So as a project manager, you want to have total control of the project, and you want to have access to those people to collaborate with and to confer with, to get their opinion. And yeah, they may make some decisions on some important questions in terms of scope and the direction of design and those kind of things. But in terms of prioritizing work and setting up the plan and putting resources on different things and agreeing what issues are most important, etc., and just really driving the project. That should be you, and you shouldn't have to defer to someone every time you need to make a decision in terms of delivery. You can defer to people in terms of decisions on stuff you don't understand, like the technical side of it or the business side of it. But in terms of delivery, you should be the one in charge. So make sure that is clear at the start. If it's not you, make it very clear on paper who it is. So at least at the end of it, if the project doesn't go well, you can say, well, I wasn't actually in charge of the project. I wasn't really a true project manager because this person was calling the shots. I had to do what they said. So yeah, just be careful in that sense. Okay, those were the 4 common mistakes. So I'm going to wrap up the video there, and yeah, I think that's it. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more videos like this one. I'm doing daily videos, about 10 minutes each. And if you're new to IT project management, you would certainly benefit by tuning in and listening. Okay, until the next time, please take care.